In the vast, silent desert of Egypt, where the horizon dissolves into a shimmering, heat-distorted haze, and the sun burns the golden sands, a riddle in stone stands against the sky. The pyramids of the Giza Plateau rise not just as buildings, but as frozen mountains, monumental and mute. They have watched for what we are told is 4.5 millennia as dynasties, empires, and entire civilizations turned to dust beneath their gaze. The largest of them, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, is taught to us in school as a tomb, a pharaoh's colossal vanity project. But this simple label feels impossibly, almost insultingly, small for the truth. It is a marvel of profound engineering, a masterpiece of applied mathematics, and a silent, unmoving map of the entire cosmos. We are told it was built with 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing a staggering total of 6 million tons. These blocks range from 2.5 tons to 15 tons, but the granite slabs forming the ceiling of the king's chamber weigh up to 80 tons each, quarried and transported from Aswan over 800 kilometers to the south, and then lifted 170 feet into the air. We are told this was accomplished in just 20 years. Let's do the math. This timeline would require a workforce to quarry, cut, transport, and perfectly place one multi-ton block every 2.5 minutes, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for 20 straight years. This isn't just difficult, it is a logistical fantasy bordering on the physically absurd, even with modern cranes, let alone with copper chisels, wooden sledges, and wet sand. And the precision is not just impressive, it is statistically impossible for its alleged era. The 13-acre base is level to within 5/8 of an inch. It is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a single degree, a pinpoint precision modern builders using GPS and laser technology would struggle to replicate. Its 144,000 original outer casing stones, before they were stripped away, were polished to an optical quality finish, joined with gaps less than 1/50th of an inch, so fine that a razor blade cannot pass between them, creating a dazzling, mirror-like surface across the entire structure. How? How did a Bronze Age culture, without the wheel for transport, without iron or steel tools, and without a documented understanding of advanced trigonometry or pi, achieve this? Conventional archaeology offers a narrative of tens of thousands of workers toiling in devotion, but this narrative is strange to the breaking point. It does not and cannot account for the why. Why this obsessive, nanometer-level precision for a simple tomb? Why encode the golden ratio, phi, and the value of pi into its dimensions with such accuracy? Why align the entire complex to the stars with the precision of a modern observatory? The sheer, baffling perfection of the Giza complex, guarded by the enigmatic, water-worn Sphinx, invites a deeper, more unsettling question. Could it be that the knowledge required to build these structures was not developed by the dynastic Egyptians, but inherited? Could they have been the beneficiaries, or perhaps just the restorers, of a civilization far older, far more advanced, and now entirely forgotten by history? Perhaps the pyramids are not tombs at all. Perhaps they are what many engineers have suggested, repositories of knowledge, celestial clocks, or even functioning energy machines, built by a lost culture to encode their wisdom for a distant future. Perhaps what we see in stone and shadow is the echo of an intelligence lost to time, waiting patiently for us to finally ask the right questions.
To truly grasp the Giza enigma, we must move past the sand and see the mathematics and the tool marks. The Great Pyramid is not just large, it is intellectually perfect, a library of information encoded in geometry, a silent testament to a science we were told did not exist. Its dimensions are a symphony of sacred geometry. If you take the perimeter of the base and divide it by twice the original height, you get 3.1415, the value of pi accurate to several decimal places. If you measure the dimensions of the king's chamber, its walls and floor plan, you find a textbook expression of the golden ratio, phi, an elegant mathematical principle that appears in all of creation, from the spiral of a galaxy to the structure of human DNA. This ratio was not officially discovered by the Greeks for another 2,000 years. This is not a coincidence. It is deliberate, masterful design. But it goes further, into the realm of the truly profound. The pyramid's dimensions are a scale model of our planet. It is a map of the northern hemisphere on a scale of 1 to 43,200. This number is not random. It is 60 times 60 times 12, a number intimately tied to our system of measuring time, 60 seconds, 60 minutes, and space, 360 degrees of a circle. The builders not only knew the precise equatorial circumference and polar radius of the Earth, a feat that would require advanced geodesy and satellite-level perspective, but they also knew the fundamental mathematical constants of our world and encoded them into this single, massive structure. How? Inside, the mystery deepens into a physical anomaly. The king's chamber is built from massive rose granite blocks, one of the hardest stones on Earth, a 7 on the Mohs scale. These blocks are cut with such flawless, almost liquid precision that they fit seamlessly. The so-called sarcophagus or coffer within it is cut from a single, solid block of even harder granite. But its internal dimensions are too large to have fit through the narrow ascending passage. It must have been placed as the pyramid was built around it. Why? Why build a 6-million-ton monument around a single, empty, and uninscribed stone box? And how was it hollowed out? Its interior corners are cut with a precision that suggests high-speed, powered tools, not the slow, painstaking work of copper chisels and stone pounders. Furthermore, as engineer and machining expert Christopher Dunn, in his analysis, points to evidence that utterly defies the primitive tools theory. He identified core drill samples from the site, remnants of holes drilled into the hardest granite. Analysis of the helical grooves in these drill cores reveals a feed rate, the speed at which the drill bit into the stone, that would be 500 times greater than what a modern high-speed diamond-tipped drill could achieve. This implies a rotational force, a tool hardness, and a feed pressure that simply did not exist in the Old Kingdom. This evidence is not consistent with a slow, abrasive grinding that copper tools would produce. It's consistent only with a form of high-speed, ultrasonic drilling technology. The same mystery applies to the basalt pavement floors around the pyramid, which show clear, parallel saw marks. These marks indicate a massive saw blade, feet in diameter, cutting through one of the hardest stones on Earth like modern machinery, leaving no wobble or starter marks. And this doesn't even touch the thousands of impossible diorite bowls found at Saqqara, carved from a stone even harder than granite, some with pencil-thin necks and perfectly hollowed-out interiors, a feat that would baffle a modern machinist. And then there is the structure itself, an anomaly hidden in plain sight. The Great Pyramid is not a four-sided structure. It is, in fact, an eight-sided pyramid. First photographed by a British Air Force pilot in 1940, each of its four massive faces is subtly concave or dented in the middle by about 1 degree. This feature is so slight it is completely invisible from the ground. It can only be seen from the air, and only at dawn and sunset on the spring and autumn equinoxes, when the sun's shadow splits the face in two. This is not an error in construction. This is a deliberate, impossibly subtle design feature that requires a total mastery of engineering and planning over the entire 13-acre base. What was its purpose? Finally, what of the narrow shafts, barely 8 inches wide, that ascend from the king's and queen's chambers? Archaeologists called them ventilation shafts, but they are not. They are blocked at one end, and, as researcher Robert Bauval demonstrated, point with undeniable astronomical precision. The southern shaft of the king's chamber pointed directly to Alnitak, the main star in Orion's belt in the Pyramid Age. The northern shaft to Thuban in the constellation Draco, the pole star of that era. These were not vents. They were star alignments, precise 300-foot-long telescopes built into the very heart of the structure, locking the pyramid to the heavens and time-stamping it to a specific, remote epoch. The logistics, the mathematics, the impossible tool marks, the internal anomalies, the subtle eight-sided design, and the celestial alignments, they all point to a level of technological and scientific understanding that fundamentally contradicts the established timeline of human history. The lost civilization theory is not born from fantasy or a desire to discredit the Egyptians. It is a rational conclusion born from necessity, forced upon us by a mountain of physical evidence that the conventional explanation simply and provably cannot address.
The mystery of Giza does not exist in isolation. It is part of a global phenomenon, a fingerprint left on every continent, a persistent, recurring echo of the same master design. Across the planet, cultures separated by impassable oceans, vast deserts, and millennia of time, all independently, or so we are told, began to build the same enigmatic structures, pyramids. In Mesoamerica, the Maya and Aztec built massive step pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, Mexico, is a titan of the New World. Its base is almost identical in size to that of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, a statistical coincidence of staggering proportions. The entire city, laid out along the Avenue of the Dead, is a precise map of our solar system, with its main axis aligned to the rising of the Pleiades star cluster. And deep within the pyramid structure, archaeologists were baffled to find a thick layer of mica, a powerful electrical and thermal insulator deliberately placed within the upper levels. This mica was not sourced locally. It was traced to quarries in Brazil, over 2,000 miles away. Why would a primitive culture transport tons of this specific, technologically useful material across a continent, only to bury it deep inside a monument? Further north, at Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of Kukulkan is not just a temple.
It's a precise solar calendar frozen in stone. It has 365 steps, one for each day of the year. During the equinoxes, the sun's shadow creates the illusion of a massive serpent descending its steps, a celestial event so precise it still draws thousands today. Even its acoustics are engineered. A clap at its base returns a high-pitched chirp, said to mimic the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This is total multi-level mastery of astronomy, mathematics, and physics. In South America, the ruins of Pumapunku and Tiahuanaco in Bolivia at a breathless altitude of 13,000 feet defy all conventional explanation. Here we find massive H-blocks of hard andesite and diorite, cut with laser-like precision and interlocking joints so complex that they look machine-made, as if designed to be part of a prefabricated kit. The stones, weighing up to 100 tons, are not quarried locally. They were moved tens of kilometers over mountainous terrain. The precision is baffling. Perfect right angles, drill holes, and internal cuts that show no sign of chisel marks, as if the stone itself was molded or cut with the technology we do not possess. Even more telling is the site of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, which guards the ancient Inca capital of Cusco. Here, massive 100-ton polygonal stones are fitted together without mortar so perfectly that a piece of paper or even a human hair cannot fit between them. This is the exact same polygonal, mortarless construction style seen in megalithic sites in Egypt and even in ancient Japan. The scale is monstrous. Some stones are over 28 feet tall and weigh over 120 tons. How were they quarried, moved miles up a mountain, and fitted with such flawless precision? In China, hundreds of enormous flat-topped pyramidal mounds, some larger in volume than the Giza pyramids, are scattered across the Xi'an province, all perfectly aligned to the cardinal points. These sites are classified as no-go zones by the Chinese government, often disguised under rapid-growth conifers. The Great White Pyramid, rumored to be over 1,000 feet tall, remains a legend, hidden from the world, its true history and contents a state secret. In Indonesia, the site of Gunung Padang is a massive terraced pyramid built on a volcanic plug. Mainstream science dates it to a few thousand years, but extensive multi-year geological surveys and core drilling by researchers on site have returned organic samples from its lowest, deepest man-made layers which have been carbon dated to over 20,000 to 25,000 years old. This is not a mistake. This is a date that doesn't just rewrite history, it obliterates the current model, placing advanced, large-scale construction deep within the last ice age. And then there is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Dated to 12,000 years old, 7,000 years before Stonehenge or the Giza pyramids. It is a vast, complex, megalithic temple built by people who were supposedly primitive, pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers. It proves that advanced, large-scale organization and sophisticated astronomical knowledge, its pillars aligned to the constellation Cygnus, existed before the end of the last ice age. Intriguingly, this site wasn't destroyed. It was deliberately and carefully buried under tons of earth, as if to preserve it. The repetition is too specific. It is not just the shape, it is the techniques. The same megalithic, mortarless construction, the same polygonal puzzle piece walls, the same precise cardinal and astronomical alignments, and the same impossible cutting of hard stone. This is a technological signature. Mainstream science calls it diffusion or coincidence, but this strains credulity to its breaking point. How did cultures, supposedly isolated by oceans and millennia, all arrive at the same unique, impossibly difficult engineering solutions? Is it not more logical to conclude that this global pattern indicates a shared global source of knowledge? A single mother civilization whose influence spanned continents and whose technological and spiritual traditions were transmitted, fragmented, and echoed by all the civilizations that followed in its wake.
If these structures were mere tombs, their alignments would be arbitrary, random, built only to face a ceremonial path. Other royal tombs, like those in the Valley of the Kings, are covered in inscriptions telling us who they were for. But these structures are silent, speaking only in the universal language of mathematics and astronomy. They are not random. They are obsessively, precisely, and intellectually aligned with the heavens in a way that reveals their true, mind-bending timeline. The Giza Plateau itself is a map. As researcher Robert Bauval outlined in the Orion correlation theory, the three pyramids of Giza are an earth-bound effigy of the three stars in Orion's belt, the constellation the ancient Egyptians identified with their god of resurrection and rebirth, Osiris. This is not a vague resemblance. It is a stunningly accurate celestial map. Their layout on the ground, their slight offset from a perfect line, and even their relative sizes, with Menkare's pyramid smaller and slightly offset, just as the third star in the belt, Mintaka, is dimmer and slightly offset from the other two, perfectly mirror the stars. This is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate act of sacred engineering. To complete the picture, the Nile River, the giver of life, running alongside the plateau, serves as a perfect terrestrial marker for the Milky Way galaxy, which runs alongside the constellation Orion in the sky. It is a perfect ground-to-sky duplicate, an expression of the central Egyptian belief, as above, so below. But here is the most profound part, the detail that unlocks the entire mystery and reveals a timeline so vast it challenges our very definition of history. This lock is a celestial mechanism known as precession. Because of the Earth's 26,000-year cycle, a slow, conical wobble of the planet's axis, like a spinning top slowing down, the stars are not fixed in our sky. This wobble causes the age we are in, defined by which of the 12 zodiacal constellations rises with the sun on the spring equinox, to change every 2160 years. The entire sky appears to slowly rotate. The sky of 2500 BC is fundamentally different from the sky of 10,000 BC. When astronomers and engineers ran the star mapping software for 2500 BC, the supposed date of construction, the alignment of the pyramids to the belt stars is close, but not perfect. It's a near miss, a sloppy alignment for builders who were otherwise obsessed with perfection down to a fraction of a degree. This is a massive contradiction. But if you run the software backward in time, you are watching a 26,000-year clock rewind. You see the stars in Orion's belt slowly descend in the sky. the alignment on the ground gets better and better and better until it reaches its perfect one-to-one mirror image, its lowest point in the precessional cycle, the moment of perfect correlation, in the year 10,500 BC. This is a date that shatters our entire understanding of the past. 10,500 BC is the end of the last ice age. It is 8,000 years before the first Egyptian pharaoh. Human civilization as we know it supposedly did not exist. And this date is not isolated, floating in theory. It is confirmed geologically by the monument standing guard nearby. As researcher John Anthony West, and crucially, Dr. Robert Schoch, a PhD geologist from Boston University, have argued, the Great Sphinx shows signs of massive water erosion, not wind erosion. When Dr. Schoch first analyzed the Sphinx, he ignored the history and just looked at the stone. His conclusion, which rocked the world of Egyptology, was that the body of the Sphinx, and especially the walls of the enclosure it sits in, are covered in deep vertical fissures, rounded, undulating gullies, and a coving pattern. This is a classic textbook signature of erosion caused by thousands of years of heavy, torrential rainfall streaming over the limestone. This is not wind erosion. Wind erosion, which is what we see on all the other monuments at Giza, including the pyramids themselves, supposedly built at the same time, creates horizontal, sharp, sand-blasted lines. The Sphinx and its enclosure are the only things on the plateau that look like they've been power-washed by a monsoon for centuries. This also explains another famous anomaly, the Sphinx's disproportionately small head. It is clearly not the original head. It has been recarved, likely by the dynastic Egyptians, into the face of a pharaoh. The massive water erosion is on the body, not the head, proving the body is thousands of years older. What was it originally? A lion's head, perfectly proportioned to the lion's body. So when was the last time it rained torrentially like that in the Giza desert? The climate data is clear. Not in 2500 BC, not in 5000 BC, but in the period before 10,000 BC. So what was happening in 10,500 BC? Let's put the pieces together. At that exact moment, the Sphinx, this massive, rain-eroded statue, which was originally a full lion, would have gazed due east at sunrise on the spring equinox. And what constellation, in that specific epoch, would have been rising directly in front of it? The constellation Leo, the lion. The precessional 26,000-year cycle was, at that exact moment, in the astronomical age of Leo. This is not a coincidence. This is a celestial and geological three-part lock-in. Point 1. The pyramids point perfectly to Orion's belt. Point 2. The Sphinx, a lion, points perfectly to the constellation Leo. Point 3. The geology of the Sphinx's body proves it existed during a rainy period. And all three of these independent facts converge on one single, impossible date, 10,500 BC. It is a timestamp written in stone, water, and stars, pointing with chilling, irrefutable precision to a past so remote we can barely comprehend it.
If an advanced civilization existed in 10,500 BC, where did it go? That date, the end of the last ice age, was not a gentle transition.
It was a time of global cataclysm known as the Younger Dryas period, a 1,200-year cold snap marked by unimaginable floods and rapid, violent climate change that wiped megafauna from the Earth. Geologists have identified meltwater pulses from this exact time, where collapsing ice dams unleashed inland seas, raising global sea levels by hundreds of feet in a terrifyingly short span. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, gaining traction in mainstream science, suggests this entire chaotic period was triggered by fragments of a comet striking the North American ice sheet, a theory that explains the layer of nanodiamonds and iridium found across the globe. If such a civilization was, as all advanced civilizations are, primarily coastal and maritime, their cities, their ports, their libraries, their entire existence would have been drowned under 400 feet of water. Their ruins would be on the continental shelves, lost to history, exactly as Plato described Atlantis sinking in a single day and night of misfortune. Their knowledge would be gone. Or perhaps some of that evidence was not drowned, but buried under miles of ice. Satellite imagery of Antarctica, the most remote and mysterious continent on Earth, reveals strange formations in the ice-free regions, such as the Ellsworth Mountains, peaks that bear a striking, uncanny resemblance to man-made pyramids, with 4 shark-ridged faces and a pointed summit. While skeptics and mainstream geologists insist these are natural nunataks, or mountain peaks shaped by wind and glacial erosion, the symmetry of these formations is arresting. Why this shape here? This wild theory is bolstered by some of the most enigmatic artifacts in history: ancient maps. The Piri Reis map, found in 1929 in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, was drawn in 1513. Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral, stated it was compiled from much, much older source maps. What it shows is astonishing. It depicts the coast of South America in perfect longitude, Africa, and the northern coast of Antarctica, specifically Queen Maud Land. This is a landmass that was not officially discovered until 300 years later, in 1820. More impossibly, the map appears to show this coastline as it is beneath the ice. It shows a land bridge, rivers, and a detailed coast that has not been free of ice for at least 12,000 years. This is not an isolated case. It is echoed by the Orontius Phineas map of 1531, which also shows a stunningly accurate, ice-free Antarctica, complete with detailed rivers and mountain ranges where only miles of ice now exist. But the most baffling part of these maps is not what they show, but how. They are drawn using a sophisticated map projection and display an understanding of accurate longitude. This is a feat that was supposedly impossible for the ancient world. You can find your latitude easily from the stars, but to find your longitude, your east-west position, you need a chronometer, a clock accurate enough to keep time at sea. Such a clock was not invented until the 1760s. How could mapmakers, thousands of years ago, chart the entire globe with an accuracy that would not be rivaled until the 18th century? The only explanation is that the source maps they used were drawn by an advanced, seafaring civilization that charted the globe before the last ice age. This was the conclusion of Professor Charles Hapgood in his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood's work was so compelling it received an intrigued foreword from Albert Einstein, proposed a mechanism for this: Earth crust displacement.
This is not slow continental drift. This is a sudden, cataclysmic shift of the planet's entire lithosphere, the outer crust 30 miles thick over the mantle, like the peel of an orange slipping over the fruit. The cataclysm of the Younger Dryas could have been the trigger, destabilizing the planet's balance. This would explain everything. It would explain how Antarctica, then in a temperate zone, could be moved to the South Pole, flash freezing it and the evidence of any civilization that lived there. It would also explain the flash-frozen mammoths found in Siberia, with undigested food in their stomachs. If an advanced civilization did exist, and its continent was violently shifted to the pole and buried under ice, what would their ruins look like after 12,000 years of glacial scouring? They would not look like pristine temples. They would look exactly like the eroded pyramid-shaped mountains we see today.
Let us, as researcher Graham Hancock has done for decades, assemble the case file, the portfolio of evidence that, when viewed together, makes the conventional story of history simply untenable. Exhibit A. We have impossible engineering at Giza. Not just large blocks, but 80-ton granite beams quarried 800 kilometers away, lifted 170 feet into the air, and placed with a 50th-inch precision. This is not Bronze Age masonry, it's megalithic technology on an industrial scale, a feat that would challenge our best 21st-century cranes. The 8-sided construction of the Great Pyramid, a subtle concavity invisible from the ground and only detectable from the air at the equinoxes, implies a level of geometric and planning sophistication that is completely out of place for its alleged era, requiring a total mastery of geodesy over a 13-acre footprint. Exhibit B. We have impossible mathematics, the encoding of pi, the golden ratio phi, and the precise measurements of the Earth are embedded in the pyramid's core dimensions. This isn't a coincidence, it's a message. It proves the builders knew the exact equatorial circumference and polar radius of our planet and used it as the basis for their measurements thousands of years before Eratosthenes first calculated a rough estimate, and millennia before we discovered these ratios ourselves. Exhibit C. We have impossible tools. The helical grooves in granite drill cores found at Giza show a feed rate 500 times greater than modern diamond-tipped drills can achieve. The perfectly flat, multi-ton basalt floors show evidence of massive, high-speed saws. These are not the marks of copper chisels and slow, abrasive sand. They are the unmistakable tool marks of a lost, high technology, consistent only with advanced machining or ultrasonic cutting. Exhibit D. We have a global pattern. The same signature, megalithic, mortarless, polygonal construction, where massive, multi-ton stones are fitted together like a jigsaw puzzle, appears at Pumapunku in Bolivia, at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, at Giza in Egypt, and in ancient sites in Japan. This is not cultural diffusion, it is a global technological fingerprint, the calling card of a single shared source of knowledge. Exhibit E. We have an impossible timestamp, a dual astronomical Orion correlation and geological Sphinx erosion alignment, which locks the Giza complex not to 2500 BC, but to the year 10,500 BC. A date that doesn't just challenge history, it shatters the entire paradigm. Exhibit F. And we have impossible maps. the Piri Reis and Orontius Phineas charts showing an ice-free Antarctica mapped with perfect modern longitude, a feat supposedly impossible for the ancient world until the invention of the marine chronometer in the 1760s. These maps are the receipts, the surviving proof of a global, seafaring civilization that charted the world before the last ice age. Taken together, this evidence means the conventional story of history, that we were primitive, fur-clad hunter-gatherers, and then we suddenly invented farming around 9000 BC, and overnight built the Great Pyramid, is not just flawed, it is provably, demonstrably false. The existence of Göbekli Tepe, a 12,000-year-old megalithic complex with T-shaped pillars aligned to the stars, proves that massive, astronomically aligned construction predates the invention of agriculture itself. We didn't build megaliths after we became civilized. It seems we became civilized in the aftermath of a megalith-building culture. A more plausible, if challenging, narrative is emerging. The narrative of a pre-Diluvian supercivilization, the very one remembered in over 1,000 independent global myths as Atlantis, Lemuria, or Mu. A civilization that existed tens of thousands of years ago, one that understood the 26,000-year precessional cycle of the stars, mastered geometry, and engineered the planet. A civilization that faced a global cataclysm, perhaps, as the Younger Dryas hypothesis suggests, from comet fragments that struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago, triggering the ice melt, mega tsunamis, and a massive, global sea level rise that drowned their coastal cities beneath hundreds of feet of water. This is not just myth. This cataclysm is supported by a black mat layer found in soil strata across North America and Europe, dated precisely to this event. This thin, dark layer is a tombstone for a lost world, containing nanodiamonds, iridium, melt glass, and carbon spherules, all smoking gun evidence of a high-temperature cosmic impact. This event would have wiped the hard drive of human history, plunging the survivors into a dark age. Perhaps the pyramids and other megalithic sites are the work of the survivors. The 7 sages, or sky gods, mentioned in myths worldwide, Oannes from Mesopotamia, who emerged from the sea after the flood to teach humanity, Viracocha from the Andes, who did the same, Quetzalcoatl from Mesoamerica, are all described as civilizing heroes. They are always depicted as arriving after a great flood to bring knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and law to the primitive post-cataclysm humans. These are not myths, they are memories. They are the fragmented, distorted recollections of the survivors of a lost, technologically advanced parent culture, desperately trying to reboot civilization and pass down their core knowledge in the most permanent way they knew. How? In stone. Therefore, these structures are not tombs. We must be clear on this. No pharaoh's mummy, no royal regalia, no treasure, not one single piece of funerary equipment has ever been found in the primary chambers of the Giza pyramids. Compare this to the actual tombs in the Valley of the Kings, which are covered from floor to ceiling with hieroglyphic funerary texts, spells from the Book of the Dead, and endless declarations of who they were built for. The Giza pyramids are architecturally silent. They contain no inscriptions, no names, no stories. They are anonymous, sterile, and mathematical, which is exactly what you would expect from a scientific instrument or a repository of knowledge, and the exact opposite of what you would expect from a human pharaoh's vainglorious tomb. They were built for a different and far greater purpose.
Perhaps, as engineer Christopher Dunn has proposed, they were a form of geophysical machine, built to harness the Earth's telluric currents and resonate with the planet's vibrational frequency. Or perhaps they were, as Robert Bevol suggests, a celestial clock, designed to mark the 26,000-year precessional cycle of the stars and warn a future humanity of the cataclysmic cycles of time. They are libraries of sacred geometry, instruction manuals in stone, built to survive the ravages of time and tide. They are a warning and a guide for the civilizations that would rise from the rubble of their world, our world.
The pyramids remain humanity's greatest and most urgent mystery. It is urgent because the answer doesn't just define our past, it defines our potential. They are more than stone. They are a question, an insistent, nagging question, etched in 6 million tons of granite. They are a direct challenge to the very foundation of our history, our origin, and our place in the cosmos. They are a glaring anomaly, a data point that refuses to fit our comfortable, linear timeline of primitive man evolving slowly and simply into us. They stand in silent mockery of our assumption that we are the apex of human achievement. We are forced to choose. Were they built by Bronze Age humans with primitive tools, a narrative that is fundamentally refuted by the impossible precision, the 80-ton blocks, the 1/50th-inch tolerances, and the ultrasonic drill marks left in the hardest granite? Is it rational to believe that a culture without the wheel, iron, or written mathematics created a 13-acre, 8-sided, astronomically aligned instrument of nanometer-level precision? Or do they reflect the profound, almost unimaginable wisdom of a civilization lost to time? A civilization that, 12,000 years ago, knew the precise measurements of our planet, knew the 26,000-year cycle of the stars, and encoded that knowledge in a monument designed to outlast the very memory of their existence. Were they tombs for forgotten kings? A tomb with no body, no treasure, no inscriptions, and built with the tolerances of a scientific instrument? Or were they something else entirely, something our modern minds are only now beginning to reconsider? Were they complex machines designed to resonate with the Earth's natural energy? Were they astronomical computers built to track the great celestial clock of precession, a clock that ticks off the cycles of global cataclysm? Were they a message, a warning for a future they knew would one day arrive, a future that had forgotten its own past? As we gaze upon these silent giants, we are not merely looking at the past. We are seeing the legacy of an intelligence, a precision, and a vision that we still cannot comprehend. We stand at their base like children, staring at a modern supercomputer, sensing its power, but having no idea how to turn it on, no concept of the operating system it runs on. They are messages across an ocean of time, sent from a world we have forgotten, silently challenging us to question the simplistic story we've been told, and to remember the profound past we have been forced to forget. The evidence, when viewed without bias, is clear. We are a species with amnesia. We are the survivors of a great cataclysm who have forgotten who we are, where we came from, and what we once knew. The pyramids and the other megalithic sites across the globe are the note we wrote to ourselves, a desperate attempt to preserve the most important knowledge, a flare sent up in the darkness of history. Perhaps then the knowledge was never truly lost. Perhaps it was hidden, not from us, but for us. Perhaps the builders knew a dark age was coming, that the 12,000-year-old cataclysm would wipe the slate clean. They were not building tombs. They were building archives. They were hiding the fire of their knowledge in the most permanent, indestructible, and geometrically profound way they could, waiting for a future generation that was finally mature enough to read the message. The only remaining question, therefore, is not who built them or how. The only question is, are we finally ready to see? Are we ready to move past our own dogma, accept the evidence before our very eyes, and reclaim our forgotten inheritance? The stones have been silent for millennia. They are waiting for our answer.